Greetings and salutations. You are listening to the Aim to North podcast, where we take a look at the competitive side of the Commander format, also known as cEDH. I'm one of your hosts, Lyndon, aka Noobzors, and today I'm joined by my co-hosts Matt, aka Null.
Yo.
Reed, aka Sick Robot.
Howdy, howdy.
And Morgan, aka Spleenface.
How's it going?
And in this episode, we're going to be covering Red in cEDH. It's another installment in our color series, so look forward to the rest of them. And yeah, this time we're going to be covering perhaps the most... What do we say? The flavor of the month? Is that what you were saying, Morgan? Of cEDH right now?
The ugly duckling that turned into a sort of okay looking swan.
It's
not quite beautiful yet, but you know.
Yeah. I feel like the massive hype around Red is maybe a bit premature, but it's definitely gotten some really important tools that are bringing it into contention for being one of the better colors in cEDH. Not quite ready to say that it's on par with what have traditionally been the core colors, but yeah. We'll get into that more in the episode. Before we do that, what have you guys been up to since the last episode?
Losing at Magic.
And winning,
yeah.
don't forget. First winning and then losing.
Drawing and losing, and then winning.
I mean, I went 4-0 in our last Team Turn 3 stream. I don't know what you mean losing at Magic.
I need to go and put together a real deck that I enjoy again, so I can just quash Morgan's ego. It's getting too large at this point.
Hey, I've definitely had my fair share of shutout streams recently, so...
Yeah, I've been... I think last time I said that I made rank 4 Mythic on Arena, and that was like at the beginning of the season, and now the season's like almost over, so I've like fallen down, gone back up, fallen down, and I'm kind of like, I hit rank... I think I went all the way down to percentage Mythic, and then climbed back up to... like rank 40 Mythic, and I've just been like camping that, and I'm probably going to camp that until the rest of the season. Just kind of low EV to play.
I also got myself to tragically 1 point short of being elite chess player. I'm at 1336. Feels bad.
Nice. Cool. So without further ado, let's jump into housekeeping. And as always in our housekeeping section, we'd like to give shoutouts to our new patrons. So shout out to we've got a doozy this one. We've got quite a few new patrons.
We do.
So it's much appreciated. So shout out to Fukins.
Shout out to Vincent T.
Shout out to Thunderfarts.
Shout out to PD Measles.
Also a Get Rug Server Boys. And shout out to Two Hand Touch.
Now, I do want to say before we go anywhere, everybody here, you guys and our listeners included, should be giving a huge thanks and a huge round of applause to Two Hand Touch, even at this point, because Two really was like one of the pioneering people in like cEDH content, specifically podcasts with the Birthing Podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunate
name for the
yeah.
podcast. You go to look it up and you're just getting a bunch of maternity podcasts.
But anyway, I mean, like I can speak like about my own experience, but it certainly had a huge impact on the way that I talk about cEDH.
Oh, absolutely,
especially in like any content that I do. Like I have listened to like all those episodes multiple times over, just because they're so good and they're so well structured, and like it's like alongside the Fossil podcast with like the bedrock of cEDH podcast now. So huge thanks to Two. Just wanted to put that out there because I'm not sure they get enough recognition for really kickstarting the trend.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And then in a bit of unfortunate news, we are parting ways with our long-suffering podcast editor, Roadkill. Actually, Morgan, do you want to speak to this a bit?
Yeah. I mean, there's not really a lot to say. We're hugely thankful for all the work he's done for us, and he's definitely helped us not just in editing our podcast, but in getting our recording quality up and like just helping us with a bunch of other things in our process. And he's also just an all-around awesome dude. And this is certainly an amicable parting. But we figured when we took Long Suffering Podcast and a Roadkill out of the credits, we'd get questions, so we decided to just be upfront about it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well said.
So see you, Roadkill. Good luck on, doing much more good luck in future endeavors, and he's off to do better things than edit a cEDH podcast. And then thank you as always to our new patrons. I couldn't move us on to new developments without giving the required you rock.
You rock.
Nice. So on to new developments. And I think it's, we should really emphasize how terrible all the other three people on this podcast are at Magic. They're losing our Nexus. We were for a long time, they're just so dominant in cEDH tournaments and Nexus Super League, and you know what? It's over. It's over.
Okay, well, if you don't count our actual record in the tournament, then we're still doing pretty well. But if you count all those losses, maybe not.
Yeah. So
we were 1 point short on making the finals of the Nexus Super League.
Yeah.
Big, sad.
But honestly, based on our record and just overall performance, it kind of felt like a cheat anyway if we got it.
Yeah, I know, right?
We did terribly.
We picked up, in the first 9 games, we earned 1 point, and in the last 3 games, we earned 9 points. That was almost the comeback story of the century, but alas.
It wasn't to be.
Okie dokie. On to the main topic of the episode, which is, again, the color red in cEDH. So, I kind of wanted to start things off with a summary of what red does in cEDH. So, if we could give a summary, Reed, Morgan, Matt, what would you guys say red does especially well in cEDH?
It does a lot of great single cards.
You know what it does great? It does having design mistakes printed in its color well.
It does. It's great at having breach.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh boy.
Yeah. I think all joking aside,
it's fantastic at having cards. Sorry, I'm just gonna get another one in there before because
okay, not all joking aside.
Most joking aside, it's great at having cards that other colors utilize really well.
Yeah.
Okay, now is all the joking aside?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is what is going to be highlighted throughout this episode is why, even if red is obviously a very strong color and provides a lot of very strong tools, why Lidded sort of mentioned whether it might be premature to sort of call it a core color, and that is it doesn't actually have many things that it provides a consistent tool set for doing. So it doesn't lend itself nicely to building a deck around red in the way that some other colors do, where you just have a big long list of options for doing specific things that it does better than other colors.
Yeah, there's a million green redundant ramp pieces. There's a million redundant counter spells in blue, but red, unfortunately, has
even white.
A couple
has
really good standout cards, but doesn't have that core redundant package of cards that allows it to put forth its own proactive game plan.
Pretty much. I would even say that even white has a long list of stacks pieces that you can sort of build around, and red just
million redundant rule of laws. Yeah.
Red has nothing on the
key themes.
Pure density of rule of laws.
How dare you? There's 2 blood moons in red. Read 2.
And hey, if you get Ruination, that's 3.
If you count Ruination as a blood moon.
Okay, the better thing, the more analogous to Blood Moon than Ruination is from the Ashes. That card's hot. I like playing that card in Godo. It's Ruination, but everyone searches their land for their deck for basics for each card destroyed. So it's
and then
free.
Shuffles. They don't shuffle through the library. They shuffle.
I still want to know how they're wording things that shuffle things into the library.
Yeah, that I was also I I had questions about how they were wording like the peripheral stuff that wasn't just shuffle your library.
Maybe they'll change all the templating to like put it at some part of the library and shuffle, like put it on top of the library then shuffle. But
anyway, we like at the time of recording we have exactly the first spoilers, so this is going to be entirely outdated by the time this goes out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, moving on.
Okay, so our first category, so we're going to kind of break things down. We're going to be discussing the key themes among cards in Red that C-Play and cEDH. And one of the themes we wanted to discuss, or kind of categories first, is just combos. Kind of get these out of the way, because as we were saying, it's hard to... This isn't the mono red episode. This is an episode about the color red in cEDH, so often it's going to be cards that are included in multicolor decks, because, you know, as far as cEDH viable red command or mono red goes, it's like, you know, Godo, arguably like Xatus or Carrot, like some other fringe stuff. And those are kind of their own unique beasts, heavily built around their commanders. So these are combos that involve red that are kind of seen play in multicolor decks. So we've got one that's kind of fallen by the wayside, which I think, you know, is still a bit underplayed, which is World Gorger Dragon. It was definitely popular for a bit, like a year or two ago, and then it's kind of fallen away.
And then Oracle hit.
I feel like there was a Rakdos craze for a little while.
There was.
Yeah.
When we got more Rakdos World Gorger outlets that didn't do much else. Yeah.
Honestly, the graveyard is like kind of free for shenanigans these days, which is really surprising to me.
I'm so angry that's the case. Because I played my graveyard deck and everybody played Cajun Rip, and then everybody else gets to play their graveyard deck now, and nobody's playing those cards.
Speaking of which, our next card is Breach, which we'd already joked about. And of course, you know, notably interacts well with Braid Freeze and LED.
Interacts well with most things, I'd say.
Also kind of just does a better job at Yogg-Will most of the time. Yeah. Wheel of Fortune.
I kind of want to say that Breach almost single-handedly saved LED from the, you know, the falling off the cliff, because for a while, like, LED was mainly supported by
cats.
Cats and Salvagers, right? Bomberman. And then everyone realized Bomberman sucks.
Yeah.
People are still into Bomberman in the decks.
Yeah. I don't get that.
The Sans Black decks are all on Bomberman, I think.
I think there's better things to be doing now. And even back then, there's still probably better things to be doing. But yeah, Breach really, you know, in making LED just look like a real Black Lotus.
I mean, in fairness, it was always very good in Kess as well, which has been a mainstay of cEDH for...
That's true, yeah.
I mean, it was certainly a mainstay right up until Breach was printed at the very least. So, like,
is Kess an OG now? Are we that far into the deep cEDH lore?
Oh God! You make me feel like I'm going through like a cEDH midlife crisis.
No. I feel like it has. You have to be in like. There has to have been a complete era after you were printed that has ended, for you to be considered an OG.
True.
So like.
But I feel like Kess has been in like proper cEDH longer than half of cEDH has been around.
I guess, yeah. If you look at it that way, then certainly Kess is long in the tooth compared to a lot of other cEDH commanders. But I don't know. I feel like not even 4 years is a little short to be pulling out the OG label.
True.
What? That was Commander 2017?
17.
When was Get Right? That was 2016?
Yeah. 2015?
Oh, no, don't talk about that.
Whatever.
I started playing Magic when in the set that Get Wrong came out. You're not allowed to talk about how long ago that was.
But yeah, so speaking of cards that were recently printed that have kind of brought Red into the modern cEDH era.
It was 2016. It was the spring set of 2016.
Okay, nice. We have Dockside Extortionist. And oh boy, I feel like we have this in the combo category. You know, honestly, World Gorgeous Dragon is a combo card, right? Doesn't really do anything else. But Breach and Dockside, really what makes them special is that they are combo cards, but they're also just so much more.
Just so generically good.
They're combo cards, except they combo with everything. Not just like AP
Dockside
having cards in hand, having cards in the grave, having cards left in your library.
Having things in the command zone for Dockside.
Permanents in play. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Though I think this is the hottest take rather than the generic take about Red. I think that, you know, we've certainly said it in a few different ways on the podcast that the Dockside hype is, I mean, obviously the card is insanely strong, but like it's, at least from a decent amount of the play that I've experienced, it is not actually that consistently like a +4 or 5 mana ritual.
Morgan, that's because you're not playing with
this
the
is
right
blasphemy,
people?
man. Why are you denying me my my consistent turn 2 Tevesh off of, you know, 5 treasures off Dockside, man? Come on.
Like, what was I think it was one of the Nexus Super League games we were playing, and there were like 2 Grixis decks and a Sans Green deck and something else, and it was like turn 3, and Dockside was making like 2.
Yeah.
It was like, wait, what?
Yeah, that was one thing I was looking at with my Tana Timna Razaketh deck, and how early can I call? Because I was trying to potentially like cut on some slots for the combo, and I was looking at Dockside. I was like, man, if I'm trying to do like an early Entomb Reanimate like combo win, Dockside just might not get there for the amount of treasures that I need, and it's kind of, you know, giving me issues. But yeah, into the mid to late game is always going to be like, you're always going to get there. Almost from, like,
I mean, on a Razaketh combo where you need like 3 or 4 treasures, but certainly like I've seen mid game Docksides that made 4. You know, like when people play
not
green
enough to do
and
most things.
Yeah.
Cool. Next up.
Yeah, Snoop Kiki. You know, classic.
Is it classic?
Yeah.
Well,
Can
Kiki
is classic.
Kiki's the
Snoop
classic.
be
Classic.
considered classic?
Snoop is the new kid on the block.
Kiki is the classic, and Snoop is the card that's brought it back into the modern era, I guess.
Yeah, Kiki was sort of just like dead in the water for a bit, just because it's just so much harder to put together in like any form than like realistically any other combo that is
The thing is,
be playing.
Kiki never really died because Blood Pod has always been like super popular for some reason, even when it's kind of like the deck that was meant to attack a very specific meta, and then that meta has disappeared. People just persist on Blood Pod.
I mean, I feel like it sort of came back around. Like, rule of laws are definitely pretty good again.
Yeah, Blood Pod's a lot better now than it
good.
was
Yeah,
like
it definitely is.
a year ago.
No, but I think Blood Pod has maintained its level of popularity.
I don't think I think it
consistently.
did fall
it's
off
dipped.
before the Flash Hulk ban.
Yeah.
Like late 2020, like early 2020 and late 2019, I saw very, very little Blood Pod on.
I mean, I'm still seeing very
I just see
little
people
Blood Pod
talking
online.
about Blood Pod and Blood Pod in their metas like constantly.
I think it's used as a great example in arguments.
That might be
Yeah. Blood Pod is a great
Counterpoint.
hypothetical.
but yeah,
about-
Snoop is now allowing for Kiki to see play in
A wide
in
other
in
places,
faster
yes.
decks for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
definitely
rather than
a
being
nice
the slow
layering
combo.
piece. Yeah. Here, Morgan, when you get this one, this next one.
Sure. So the next one we have is Dual Caster Twin Flame, which has never been like the forefront of you know, combos in cEDH, but it's always sort of been like a background, particularly in low color red decks when it's like, you know, I just kind of need a backup win condition, especially one that like works through things like Null Rod and things like it works through both Null Rod and Curse Totem, and it's just like, you know, it's a very linear A plus B combo, and Dual Caster Mage is like not the worst, especially when you're restricted on colors, because you can just like copy other people's big spells or counter spells or whatever.
Combo that sometimes saw play in Godo decks.
Yeah, it was occasionally a backup in Godo. I think it was in the Mardu farm decks for a long time. I actually
no CMC off Adnos.
yeah, Yeah, it's
that was
it's
before,
only 5
that was
mana.
before
I mean,
Darkside, I think.
before Oracle was printed, it was also a backup in a lot of cast lists, right?
I think it was in
especially
some.
before Jace, right?
It was in like the more like mid-rangey cast lists,
Yeah.
like the twin ones and the reanimator ones. I don't think it was in like Storm or dedicated consult. Usually.
Yeah, maybe if you're like expecting a ton of Cage.
Yeah.
And finally on our list, good old Glinthorn Buccaneer. Wasn't really a combo until Commander Legends was printed.
People did things with it with like curiosity effects, but
that's not a combo.
Yeah.
It is.
It's just
it's
absolutely
synergy.
A combo. No, it's
what? No, it's absolutely. You get up to 8 cards in hand, go to end step, and kill the table. That's definitely a combo.
If you have to get up to the full 8 cards, sure.
You could discard a card and ping 3 people to draw 3 cards.
Yeah, like as if you could get to the cleanup step and then win the game, right?
I mean, I've seen it happen.
Mr. Get Wrong here trying to hate on the end step, kill somebody with 8 cards in hand. With the draw engine in play as part of the combo.
Yeah, I guess Glinthorn with the activated ability drawing cards is, not so difficult, but sure. That wraps up our combo section. And I guess so. Our next category was miscellaneous broken stuff / build around.
Well, just themes for red cards, because that was sort of combos, which is like a different section. Now we're sort of getting into the like, what does red do as like coherently as a color in cEDH, right? Mm-hmm. Rather than just like how does it win the game.
Yeah. So Breach and Dockside, we kind of singled out as cards that are unique among the red cEDH card pool, where these are cards where you would build your strategy or your deck. You'd be like, I wanna start with Breach and build around from there, or start with Dockside, build around from there. Or they're less like, I'm playing red, let me pick the best generic red cards to put in my deck. Like, I'm gonna put Pyros and Rebs or something in. Like, now these are cards where these are like can be the main focus of what you're trying to do.
They are first among first in terms of design mistakes.
Yeah, pretty much.
I still can't get over the fact that Dockside was printed in a commander set.
Yeah.
It just feels like something that was printed in a 1v1 focused format, and then they weren't like, oh wait, when you have 3 opponents, this is super dumb.
Yeah.
They knew.
You would think it'd be the opposite of the like the True Name Nemesis kind of situation, right?
Yeah.
But no. Yeah, so I think this is the category or themes of cards where when red gets more of these, more Breaches and Docksides, that's when we can start considering it more core, at least in my opinion.
I'm actually not sure
please,
that's true. But
no.
Yeah. Anyway.
So
I think that's not true because of the next category that we're talking about here, which we should get it because those were the only real 2 that we had. But the next category is, and we talked about this for green in the last color episode, but for tutors. So we sort of talked about in the green episode how green has like one primary tutor class being creatures, and then like a secondary tutor class being like lands, specifically non-basics, because green does tutor forests really well, just not in a cEDH context. But it doesn't really tutor for non-basics that well. And if we were going to...
It does.
Still in a cEDH context, it has like a couple of tutors. Not nearly as many like as its creature tutors.
No, but it definitely there's no
As in terms of like the classes of tutor that red has, it's like for cEDH, its classes is random shit. It tutors for overly specific things at usually a below average rate.
Yeah, it has the most rate of tutors that find any card but make you discard one at random.
Yep.
But yeah, we have other silly examples like Imperial Recruiter, and of course there's Goblin Recruiter if you're on
Snoop Piles,
Goblin,
and arguably like Goblin Engineer.
Yeah.
Its tutors are like they're restricted usually more than just like a type. It's like either a type subtype combo or like a type plus some other restriction combo.
And, it's usually restricted to like more than a type and sometimes more than that.
And also maybe arguably sometimes the red tutors, you could make the case that they're kind of just stolen valor for what white should have. Imperial recruiter. I guess the recruiter of the guard came later, but really it's like it fits more in white. And then same with like Godo stealing. Like, why Godo has no right to be red, man. That makes no sense. Godo's tutor ability should be on a white card.
That was very
Godo,
much
though?
out of like a story basis than it was a card design basis.
Honestly, Godo should be Boros just because of like the extra combat plus the
dude,
like,
that'd be
search for equipment.
freaking sick.
But, yeah, can't give good cards to Boros, so not doing that.
Yeah.
Are we calling Godo a good card now?
Never mind.
Godo
But
and
yeah,
Boros?
so like the point I was sort of getting at here is that like
Godo with
red
flaws.
doesn't really have like, in terms of cEDH anyway, like a primary tutor identity aside from random shit at a bad rate. So like this is sort of the issue that I have with like trying to be, or like red's transition into being a primary color in cEDH is that like you need to be able to find your things consistently to be a core color, and it just can't find its things consistently without something in the command zone to do it for it.
Yeah, and just having like really good cards for like combos or just generically good cards in the forms of Breach and Dockside. Just because you can like if you're in if you have black tutors or like you're in Grixis to get the like Stormy synergies, like it's not enough to say that red is the most powerful or one of the most powerful colors in cEDH, as some people like to be saying as
It
like
has
hot
like
takes.
three really good cards and then like a bunch of like like fine cards, like good cards. Like
No, I think it's a bit of the new shiny toy mentality.
I definitely like, I'm not saying red's a bad color, it's just you need consistency to be a core color, and it just doesn't have that, and it would need a lot of printings to get to that point.
Next up, we have rituals, which is a category. In the green episode, didn't we argue, or maybe there's like pre-show when we were arguing whether or not green counted as having rituals? As part of its identity with the carpet and whatever.
No.
Yeah, typically rituals, the purview of black and red. And
Red in the
green
modern
if you're
era, black
debating it.
historically.
Yeah.
Historically, meaning for like the first like 3 to 5 years of Magic's life. Red for the entire rest of it.
Yeah, well, one thing that I think you might notice as we go through this list is that there's a lot of new cards that are popping up. So first on this list, here under rituals, we have Jeska's Will.
Arguably one of the best rituals
Ever printed?
format.
Yes.
Yeah. It's the thing. Okay, I don't get too deep into Jeska's Will. I think one of the things that's important to realize with the red tutors, the red rituals, is that the mana they generate is they're generally viewed as worse than the black rituals and the green rituals because the cards you're trying to cast off of them aren't utilizing the pips as well.
Well, I don't
as it could be. Right.
I mean,
like
I think
imagine if
also
Seething Song
just worse. Like,
I mean, Seething Song is
Worst Dark Ritual?
No, not versus Dark Ritual, versus like Cabal Ritual. Right?
That's
like
just an easy condition to satisfy that.
Seething Song is also just worse than Dark Ritual, right?
Yeah.
Like
most cards, most rituals are worse than Dark Ritual.
Right. Like I think what I was about to say is that like they are. It's not just that like the red cards aren't as like good to be casting off. Like Seething Song into whatever isn't as good as Dark Ritual into Necropotence. Like obviously that's true, but it's also just like the cards from the first 5 years of Magic tend to be a lot better than the cards from the 20 that follow. 20.
Yeah.
Okay, but here let's just list these rituals and we can discuss them more. So we've got Jeska's Will, Treasonous Ogre, Simian Spirit Guide, Rite of Flame, as the cards that are like core scene play and Seething Song.
And I mean obviously Dockside also like fits under here, but it's so much stronger that.
Yeah, it's like an outlier piece of data. It's technically a ritual, but it's calling it just a ritual is underselling it.
Yeah. Also, the worst calling the week as well.
Infernal
Plunge.
That's the one.
Yeah.
So the one thing I kind of want to discuss with these is that imagine if, like Treasonous Ogre, if Treasonous Ogre added black or blue, like it would be so much more strong because of just the actual usefulness of those pips, right? The red rituals, despite like being able to provide some insane effects, like are just not as good because of the pips they provide, and that's just red does not have enough good cards that you want to be casting with those pips at this point.
Well, I mean, Crick is basically black Treasonous Ogre, right?
I guess, yeah.
Honestly, reasonable.
If you put it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely not, because the whole campaign generic thing is an issue, but...
I did want to say, though, Jessica's Will does have an incredibly good argument for one of the best rituals ever printed, considering that it does see play in a Legacy deck now.
Also, I think I've ever seen any other ritual also flip into either Lion's Eye Diamond plus Peer into the Abyss, or Wheel and Yawgmoth's Will.
Yeah.
Both of which I have seen off Jessica's Will.
I think it depends on, so I like trying to recall back to the episode we did on Commander Legends and like me talking about Jessica's Will. I think it really, calling it the best tutor ever printed or the best ritual ever printed or among them, really depends on how you evaluate that, right? Like Jessica's Will has an insanely high ceiling, but it doesn't see play in every single deck that runs red because the floor is lots of decks that
any ritual sees play in every deck in its color. Like
no, but the decks. Some decks would run.
Sure, obviously, I think there are decks that are both red and black that have dark ritual in them, but no Jessica's Will.
Yeah, you really want to be getting both sides of the Jessica's Will in order to really take advantage of it. But yeah. Anyone else have anything to say about the red rituals?
Yeah, red.
It's probably. I will say it's probably.
They make mana and they have extremely or no condition at all.
It's probably like the most consistent or like the most dense like category among red cards, which is probably why Goto exists as a deck, is because it's like it's leveraging the thing that red sort of just does the most consistently.
No, I think most of the good Goto decks have cut like the super deep like rituals, like Pyretic Ritual, right? God, why am I blanking on the?
I mean, the
ritual, thank you.
The best quote unquote rituals in Goto are Mana Crypt, Soul Ring, Mana Vault.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, one thing. I guess my last thing to say on rituals is if you miss monkey in modern, I guess you can have a spot for your monkeys in cEDH.
If you miss monkey in modern, why?
You're a terrible person.
Dude, I love playing it in my Neoform deck.
Moving on.
Neo brand.
Oh my goodness.
That's like exactly why it was a problem.
Yeah.
That's like, you're not even
correct.
Like, okay, I liked playing Mystic Sanctuary in my Fires of Invention turns deck. That wasn't why Mystic Sanctuary was a problem. You're like, I like playing it in my deck that wins on turn 2. It's like, oh.
Turn 2? Whoa, turn 1, buddy.
Slow hand, yeah.
Yeah, so that's it for rituals. Next up, we've got the counter spells / protection.
Counter spells.
Yeah.
Interacting with the stack suite.
I like to call these affectionately the stop countering my stuff cards.
Yeah,
that's basically what they do.
The key cards in this category being Pyroblast and Red Elemental Blast.
And SWAT.
SWAT, yeah.
Well, I like to say the key cards because that's kind of where, like, SWAT and a lot of the stuff is pretty new. Like Pyro and Reb.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's new enough that Lyndon basically hasn't played cEDH since it was printed. So
yeah,
pretty much.
So in his mind, it doesn't even exist.
But I think if Pyro and Reb, the fact that they remove permanents, man. If Red had, how many more Pyros and Rebs would it take for that to be like a super consistent category of Red, where you'd like bump it up in the colors.
Can I rephrase your thought experiment?
4 total.
Sure.
Okay. How many Pyro and Red Elemental Blasts have to be printed for Crom to become unplayable?
Oh wow. Negative.
How many? Okay, actually, just how many Pyros and Rebs would you run if you like in a multicolor deck with blue?
In this meta, 10.
In a multicolor deck with blue, I don't think I'd go above 2. In a multicolor
I guess
deck
actually
blue,
the question also does depend on
yeah.
how many, if this same restriction applies to your opponents, right?
yeah.
Because then there's the
also-
weird
it
metagame
also
of all your
depends on-
Pyros and Rebs don't do anything against each other.
Yeah, so you just
You
cut
start
all
like
the
Hydro
blue.
Blast
You cut all the
instead,
blue
yeah.
cards, all the blue interaction to blank your opponent's pyros. And
Sort of like Imps Mischief, Deflecting SWAT.
oh yeah, for sure. Also, yeah, are they pyros or are they rebs? Do they
Yeah.
get countered by deflecting SWAT and Imps Mischief or no?
No, true. But yeah, no.
Can I win through a heuristic study? Doesn't matter if I can remove them.
Remember when you know what? Never mind. I was yeah, just a bit too much of a tangent. Too much of a tangent.
Sure.
We'll stick to this list. Yeah. So we've also got deflecting SWAT. Obviously, just insanity. Dude, there's a deflecting SWAT that's, or not a deflect. It's like a similar effect. What's I think it's called Bolt Bend.
Yeah.
That was like
Virgo,
printed
yeah.
actually pretty recently. That card, people should keep an eye on that card because if the right commander comes up, I think there's maybe only like 1 or 2 commanders that could reasonably play Bolt Bend now, like Riel maybe. But that card is quite good.
That's very good, yeah.
Yeah. Keep an eye on that
I
one.
feel like I have
If,
not
if
looked
your
at this
commander
card
enables
before.
it, it's basically
it's-
like a
it's
1 mana
sort of-
deflecting SWAT.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
sort of
which is-
worse SWAT, but it's still like fine.
Yeah, but like worse SWAT is definitely not the same as not
Still,
worse.
yeah.
Still good, yeah.
Yeah. Dude, yeah. Buy your Bolt Bends now before they get bought out. Isn't like a comment or something?
It's an uncommon, I think.
Uncommon.
It's,
I mean,
it's an
we'll-
uncommon.
It's an uncommon from like one of the most heavily
Yeah.
open sets ever.
We'll see Ricochet Trap get fucking bought out before.
Okay, so I put this next card on the list, which is Tybalt's Trickery. And I wanted to kind of talk with this, but you guys, because we didn't do a call
Set
time
review, yeah.
set review. So I was thinking about Trickery, and I would probably include it in my like Tymna Tana Res
I would
Kept
not.
deck.
Nope.
No way.
Nope.
No.
Really?
So I think that the ability to counter to actually interact on the stack, you know, to stop something like a board wipe that's damaging your stacks pieces, or counter ad nauseums or something, I thought that would be, you know, reasonable, and or the
might
ability to
put
protect
it
your
in-
combos and stuff.
I might put it in like a mono red deck or something, but I think
Honestly, you'll counter their board wipe, they'll mill 3, and then they'll reveal Breach, and then they'll use the 3 milled cards to just recast it. So
yeah,
I
like,
think there's enough whiffs that you can hit off the Trickery that if you're trying to stop exactly like one thing, it's somewhat
I
reasonable.
also don't like how potentially inconsistent it is as backup for your combos. Like if you Tybalt's
Yeah.
Trickery a counterspell heavy deck,
Yeah.
you're like, you know, 80% of the time it works.
Yeah, I think in a it's the strongest case for it is in a heavy creature like stacks hate bearsy based deck where you are not in blue, so you can't protect. There's no really good way to protect yourself against like a board wipe.
You just
And
play it in a deck that always puts Drannith Magistrate into play.
Or
I mean,
Yeah,
though
those
the
are
decks
true.
do run those cards, so it does help cover some of the weaknesses. But I do think that's kind of where it fits best.
Oh, sure. It probably
Yeah,
fits
I-
best there in terms
If only
of
you could
cEDH,
play it in
but-
Lavinia, am I right?
Okay, actually, one more question about
Morgan,
Trickery. Would you
Morgan,
play
how?
this?
No, hold up, Morgan. How much are you being paid to mention Lavinia every podcast? I need to know. Because if it's enough, I want to.
Unfortunately, there's a non-disclosure clause in my contract.
yeah,
So in something like a red-black deck, where historically they might have run hand attack to provide disruption and protection for their combos, would you play a Trickery over a Duress or Thoughtseize?
No.
I personally think I
Probably
would
not.
because the versatility of being able to stop your opponent's game plan, even if somewhat inconsistently, and not because the thing with your Thoughtseize and Duress is that you kind of have to pre-commit to playing them. You can't hold them back and potentially like sandbag. I think the sandbag ability of Trickery would maybe eke out a spot in those decks, but again, those decks aren't typically running Rule of Laws or heavy creature-based stacks effects, so it's tougher there.
Well, don't you kind of have to commit with Trickery because your combo needs to be on the stack? Where with Thoughtseize, you can actually realize that you can't win through their interaction.
Thoughtseize is also just like a lot more mana efficient. Like 1 mana is just so much less than 2.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing with Thoughtseize is that sometimes you can pick wrong, right? And you're like, there's 2 people with open mana.
Unless
let me see the one. Let me try and see if there's only one piece of interaction, right? Like you're like, you can pick wrong.
Just
Thoughtseize is definitely the better card for the skilled player, I think. But yeah, okay. Next up, speaking of red-black decks, I think so. We've got Overmaster on here, which is I think a card that's only seen play in like Grenzo.
Exactly, Grenzo.
I maintain that Grenzo. It is correct to play in Kikar.
Yeah,
what maybe. Make uncounterable.
Defend yourself.
And Burnout is our last one on this list.
I mean, I think that like any single red mana cantrip that does anything remotely useful is very good in Kikar.
That's pretty reasonable.
I know, crazy. Wild take.
Also has
I guess that also means it's good in Birdy, if that deck ever gets off the ground.
Oh, I guess, yeah.
I think so. To conclude this little theme segment, it really seems like talking about Bolt Bend, SWAT, Trickery, all coming out fairly recently. It definitely seems to be a trend that they're trying to lean into these this kind of interaction for red, and I wonder if we're going to see more of these. By the end, how many more of these cards we're gonna would be on this list. Come the end of 2021.
I would be incredibly happy if red gets to be like secondary in stack interaction. I think that's like an incredibly healthy thing to like move toward, and it's again pretty healthy for cEDH to have like another color that can actually interact on the stack.
Okie dokie. Next up,
I just feel like I wish even more that it was going to be white that was going to be secondary in stack interaction. Because it makes
so much more sense. Yes.
Oh well.
White and making sense.
White and having nice things is
Mana Tithe. What are you talking about, dude? Mana Tithe, Lapse of Certainty, dude. White is packed with stack interaction, man.
I mean, they do.
All right, name the third one.
Yeah, there is
Order of the Sacred Torch.
Yeah. So next category is Wheels, which is kind of
It's not really the greatest name for this category because it includes wins and
fine symmetrical mass draw. Like what you want?
Non-advantage
Banquery
draw. I guess it can be advantage.
Who else?
Am I the only one who calls it Banquery? I probably
not anymore.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just find it funny.
Not for long.
Okay.
Until this episode airs.
Who wants to give a little discussion on Wheels?
I mean, they're Wheels. What are you
Stop being bad at playing them. That's that's the discussion.
Yeah.
We're not going to go into how to not play them badly. That's for a future episode because content.
Yeah,
but
yeah, exactly.
That could be a topic, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like Wheels. I mean, obviously they're extremely strong. There's a reason that they're banned and restricted in other Eternal formats because just dumping your hand of fast mana and then drawing up to 7 is very, very strong. I think that they're a little bit tricky to play in cEDH because you have to be dumping your hand the best out of 4 people usually rather than the best out of 2 people.
Yeah.
And especially the best out of 4 people where they're all playing sort of closer decks to you than you would see in 2-player.
Yeah, so it's definitely like I think people like Wheels are a card that people often play incorrectly. Like they play them when they let their opponents recover from being super low on cards, or they play them when they don't have like the most mana coming out of the wheel, or they play them, when people are kind of shields down and someone after them is very likely to be able to win. They have a decent amount of mana and then a fresh hand. And obviously they play them into Hull Breachers and Notion Thieves as well. But,
I think I was gonna say the biggest shortcomings I think of Wheels is like you're saying in the 60 card formats, your opponents aren't also, so you've got the whole only have to dealing with one person going up an advantage. You also don't have to worry about them. Your opponents all main decking, absolute wheel blowouts. Yeah, the Notion Thief and Hull Breacher, which can come out of quote unquote nowhere. And one thing also, you were mentioning it puts your opponents up in card advantage, but another thing, if you just dump your hand wheel and pass, you are also the last person who gets to untap with their fresh hand. So you do need to be really, really cautious with your wheels, just putting your opponents up in card advantage, giving them these cards, and then allowing them to untap with the mana and the blowouts. Lots of risk, but when they work, the reward is immense.
Yeah, I think they're honestly one of the few cards in Magic that actually relatively frequently has they have a negative floor, and they actually are near that floor pretty frequently. Whereas a lot of other cards, most cards that are bad in a given situation just don't do much for you, but they generally don't actively hurt you in the way that Wheels can if you play them at the wrong time.
How many times have you guys been completely out of the game, and then someone casts a wheel, and then all of a sudden you're back in it?
Approved.
I gotta say, more times than I have been punished for casting a wheel. So, happy about that.
Nice. Cool. Next up, we've got damage-based removal / mass removal. And this is so here we've got kind of two categories, I guess. I guess there's three. There's really three.
Should also be in here, yeah.
Yeah, there's the Clasms, so which are the 2 CMC board wipes, or Pyroclasm, Whip Flare, yada yada. And then we've got the Angers, which are the 3 damage wipes, and then we've got beyond that, which are Magma Quake, Burning, not Burning. Oh, God.
Earthquake and Earthquake.
Mizium Orders.
No, God, what's the one that the Blasphemous Act? Oh my God, I can't believe I forgot that card for a second.
Blasphemous Act, yeah.
Some decks have discussed Blasphemous Acts. I know Goto did for a bit.
Generous. And then, sounds terrible.
Well, the one I was advocating for over Blasphemous Act, if you wanted a better than a quote unquote full Wrath, which is God, I also can't remember the one that deals damage equal to the number of creatures in play.
Yeah, Chain Reaction.
Chain Reaction.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Honestly, I've been so underwhelmed by that card. It almost always never kills the thing I want it to kill.
The whole issue with this category is sort of just they're good when they're good. They sort of directly wax and wane depending on other commanders in the meta.
Yeah.
Well, one thing is Clasms used to be so good until Drannith was necessary for a lot of the Clasm decks to remove.
Well, also, and then people stopped playing Dorks.
Yeah.
That
people
didn't help
stopped playing people stopped playing Tymna. People stopped playing the Gila.
People still play Tymna. They just don't cast her.
Sure, they just don't cast her. Yeah, it's when people are playing dorky Tymna and Najeela, Clasms are still incredible. Just they're not doing that right now.
There's a big difference between the Clasms, the 2 CMC 2 damage and the 3 CMC 3 damage, because often if you're not playing green, casting a 3 CMC spell on turn 2 is far from guaranteed, and it's not super reliable. So you could often, depending on where you are in the turn order, you could Clasm before
I cast 5 mana spells on turn 2 consistently. What are you talking about?
before you could realistically profit immensely from having Dorks in play, you could get down a Clasm. Whereas the Anger of the God 3 CMC 3 damage effects are often, it feels just a smidge too slow.
Going last, watching everyone else curve a Dork into a Tymna and just looking at the Clasm in your hand.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's all coming together.
Dude, if Drannith had only had 2 toughness, man, I think
the balance.
I'm so happy it's got 3.
Has certainly swung back towards Klasms away from Angers with the printing of Opposition Agent and Hull Breacher.
Oh
yeah. It would have been nice if there was still no question about Klasms being the superior cards. Oh yeah, one thing actually I wanted to mention, because our next category is going to be Artifact Hate. There's a card that I think is so in some mono red decks, or depending on if you're going to be playing Klasms or Angers, you're also looking at running Biforce and those kind of things. Fiery Confluence is one that I've actually been somewhat happy about in when I was testing with it in Godo. The ability to destroy.
I've played enough Vintage Cube to know what Fiery Confluence does, and it does 6 damage to target opponent.
No, the ability to pick off multiple artifacts, like to just be a Biforce for 3, or to be a hybrid between Anger of the God, Pyroclasm, Magma Quake for 1, and Biforce, like that kind of flexibility is pretty nice. And also,
why do I feel like you're always choosing the 1 damage to each creature 3 times?
Yeah.
No, I certainly I could see boards where you choose 1 damage to each creature twice, and also
2 Biforces. Yeah. Pick off 2 things.
God, I'm just so happy that card exists, because Fiery Confluence is simultaneously like functionally like the best top end like gameplay, like just like card strength wise for burn decks and cube, but it also just like feels the best, you know? I don't know, maybe that's just me.
I'm gonna deal damage
I think that might just be you.
All in one.
Yeah, so that's it for damage-based removal. Next up, we have Artifact Hate. Someone go ahead. I've brought up my Fiery Confluence. I've been speaking a lot. Someone else tag in.
Speaking of cards that deal with artifacts and kill Drannith, we've got a Braid.
A Braid is just it's just half of Fiery Confluence.
The best half.
Yeah.
How could you? Dealing damage to faces
it's not the best half. Yeah, I don't know what to say here, guys. Kills Drannith.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Kills artifacts.
It's also an instant.
It's definitely a very versatile card.
I would love if they could print just like a 1 mana Braid. Can they just?
That would be hype. Yeah, and just make it a shock instead.
Yeah.
Dude, yes.
So it'd be better than both shock and like
Shatter.
No, shock goes face.
Limited to creatures,
true.
Yeah, shock does go face, and that's the whole point, right?
Yeah.
And also, you could even tack on non-creature artifact, make it worse than a shatter.
True. Yeah, okay. So we've got a Braid. We've got a couple more things on this list.
So we
They're all just
the next one's Rocks Monkey. I don't know if that one.
That one's fake. That's a fake cEDH card.
That's not a fake cEDH card. People just aren't playing enough of it.
Okay, there.
Are you talking?
Are you sure you'd rather be playing Mox Monkey over Hammer Mage? Come on, bro. Come on.
I'd really rather play Mox Monkey over Tuk Tuk Scrap.
Okay. Biforce and Meltdown are like the actual answers here, and then to a lesser extent, Shattering Spree and Vandal Blast.
Yeah.
I like the Shattering Spree versus Biforce argument. I know for a while Godo was like, when they were playing Biforce Shattering Spree, because there was lots of Null Rod that they wanted to remove. The idea that Shattering Spree is quote unquote like uncounterable is kind of nice. And also, yeah, you can the colorless mana into Biforce, but you're losing, quote unquote 1 mana for like the rate. It's not really, it's not as clear cut as I think it always is, but unless you're like in a 3 color or more deck. Biforce versus Shattering Spree.
By the way,
just hit it off of Jessica as well.
Yeah, this like list reminded me of the existence of Meltdown, because I periodically forget that Meltdown exists, and I'm just like wondering why Meltdown isn't seeing more play right now.
It really should, yeah.
Because Meltdown seems like nuts currently.
Because it turns off your dockside.
Oh no! What a tragedy.
I guess also one thing too is like if you're in green,
if you're like in green red,
right? The argument between like, I guess Meltdown is still probably always better than Seeds of Innocence.
Oh yeah, 100%. Because you can fire off Meltdown for like 0 a lot of the time and just get people anyway for like 1
or
mana.
Or
1, yeah.
Like just get all the
2 mana, get all the Soul Ring Vaults and Crypts, like, and Moxen.
And Moxen, yeah, it's pretty good.
Especially with fucking like Springleaf Drum and Mox Amber and stuff, and Paradise Mantle and Rog decks. Like,
dude, I feel like we need little cutaways, like Into the North says play Meltdown.
I want Meltdown to reach a point in usage where, because the amount of people that would run Hammer Mage in like there should be like maybe like for every 4 Meltdowns that see played, it should be like 1 Hammer Mage or something. I just want to see a deck that runs Hammer Mage, man. That card's cool. I love Spell Shapers. Such a cool type of creature.
If only they weren't bad.
Oof.
All right, which brings us to our next topic, which is stack pieces, the bad kinds. So, of course, we have Blood Moons. So
which nobody plays
Blood Moon
anymore.
and its creature version, which is Magus of the Moon.
Yet another thing that was killed by Dockside.
Yep.
Can you say that without laughing, Matt?
Magus of the Moon.
There we go. It's a respectable Magic card, okay?
It is, yeah, it is.
And then we have some bad ones.
No, Stranglehold's good, man.
It was good until they put an opposition agent.
Stranglehold is a great opposition agent option in Sans Black.
Okay,
I can laugh after that one.
Okay.
I can laugh after that one.
What was the game, Reed, where you tried to like Praetor's Grasp me and because its opponents can't search libraries, Stranglehold stopped that.
Yeah. We were what was it? We were playing Oh, were we playing at a? Oh yeah. So you were on Abzan, and I was on Viral's still with a Praetor's Grasp still on the list because I forgot to take it out.
I'd like to see opposition agents stop Praetor's Grasp. Okay.
Oh wait, was this? No, I mean he obviously wasn't playing Abzan, right? Because that's not how Stranglehold works. But
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, you were playing your Blood Pod list.
You're playing Blood. Yeah.
I was not playing Blood Pod. Take it back. Notice how I said Tanatimna Razaketh every time in this episode and every time on the previous podcast. I do not play Blood Pod.
Blood Pod. We're saying they're the same picture.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stranglehold. I still think Stranglehold's reasonable card, even with the redundancy provided by opposition agent. Lots of decks would still like to be playing Stranglehold. Possibility Storm is a card that used to be an amazing stacks effect that you could then like break parity on amazingly, and then Draenith came along and started seeing play in every deck, and you don't want to be providing half of an A+B combo for your opponents.
And the best part is they don't even necessarily have to find the B. They might just be able to brute force their way to the B.
Just get there.
Like I play 8 creatures, and let's see. There's a Dockside. There's a Gilded Drake. There's a Draenith. Like,
or even like you do that. It's just like, or they're playing one of the decks where they either hit the Draenith or they hit one of their creature rule of laws.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Okay, I mean tangent, but this happened to me at like a mythic, or what are those things called? Like the mythic gatherings. In a mid-power game, we accidentally into Eidolon plus Possibility Storm. And I think we just decided, we're like, okay, we're just gonna remove one of these cards off the table and keep playing.
I mean,
the thing is, a lot of the decks that play Possibility... Huh?
It's a May. So like, you don't have to accidentally assemble the lock, is what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, but I was saying, with Rule of Laws and Possibility Storm, the decks that are going to be running Possibility Storm are the ones that are breaking parity on it in the command zone. So it's usually not a perfect, like your opponent's assembling a Rule of Law doesn't really
Oh, you know what?
hinder you. In fact, it's often beneficial.
I think the rule of law was in play, and then we chaos warped into the possibility storm, or something like ridiculous like that. Yeah.
How many decks could reasonably break parity on a rule of law, or sorry, a possibility storm?
Exactly.
In cEDH? Is it just like Kenrith and
It's
Godo?
Kenrith
Is that
and
it?
Godo, yeah.
Yeah, reasonable.
Yeah.
There's like like
Vanifar.
other meme stuff, but like I mean Kess.
Yuriko, maybe in a weird way.
Yasun.
Yeah, the Sun would do it.
I mean, Kess can break parity on it in that Kess can set up to just remove it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which isn't strictly breaking parity, but you know.
And I guess some bad stacks pieces like mentioned. We mentioned Rule of Law. Ruination and From the Ashes, which are cards I think are you know,
and I mean
should be set along with Blood Moon.
There's also Punisher effects, but when's the last time somebody played a Punisher effect in cEDH? It's just like it's so hard to make those actually work.
And our final category for themes, key themes in red, is goblins.
Goblins.
Goblins all the way down, baby. Yeah, Kiki, Snoop, and all their,
associated
friends.
act.
You've got the best goblin. Dockside.
Yeah.
Truly transcends key themes in red.
Dockside, the card that makes Goblin Matron actually like playable.
Dockside was the goblin that finally broke through the glass ceiling. He made it out. He transcends being a goblin.
He's no, because there were the blue goblins on Mercadia, right? Where they were this weird aristocratic ruling class, but yeah, apart from that.
Okay, so on to weaknesses. What are the key weaknesses of red?
Literally most things.
Dude, that's
Okay,
just not true. That's not true.
The biggest one, obviously, is consistency.
Yeah.
As I think you can
outside of the command zone, importantly.
Outside of the command zone, because
I mean, yeah, consistency.
Okay.
Is generally
arguably
not
Godo
an
is the
issue
most
in
consistent,
command zone.
right? Yeah.
but I think that's more the rule, like the design of the command zone, than the cards that actually go in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as you know, you can extract from our conversation, like red is all over the place, and maybe its most consistent category is rituals, but it has a strong contender against, it being the best at that.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, like many of the cards that red, or like the things that red does, it does like substantially worse than, or like there are better versions of those effects in other colors. It may have more of them, but like I mean, and I think that's partially exemplified if you look at like the cEDH staples list, which takes decks from the database and then puts the cards that are in, I forget what the cutoff threshold is. It might be like 10%.
It's 10. Or
10% of the
10.
decks in those colors.
I think it's
whatever.
10 of the decks, not 10%.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not. Yeah, whatever the cutoff threshold is, those cards, only 12% of them are red. 8% of them are white, and then green, black, and blue are all above 20%. So, like that's just an illustration of like how not like it's still quite underrepresented compared to Sultai, even if like red is the flavor of the month and like some of these red cards are archetype and deck defining and people are going out of their way to play them. It still doesn't there just aren't that many of these red cards, even in like the Grixis Turbo Nas shell just doesn't actually play that many red cards.
Yeah, even if Thrasios Timna were just choose your 4 colors, like you could choose any 4 colors for them, red would maintain the fact that it's not well represented.
And I guess the final weakness for red is enchantments. This is something that I guess people also talk about in mid-power or casual
It's like
EDH,
what?
where
Chaos Warp, Worldfire, Tibble's Trickery.
Worldfire is not even legal in this format, my guy.
Yep.
and trickery. I mean, if it's on the stack, I guess.
Oh, I guess it also has Armageddon. You can just pitch your hand to deal with it.
Honestly, though, you're probably dealing with the most problematic enchantments, which are Rhystic Study and Mystic Remora in red, pretty well.
Yeah.
With Pyro and Rep.
Yeah, but if you're like playing a Goto deck and you're trying to remove a like a Stony Silence or something, good luck, buddy.
I'm trying to remember.
Your best answer is like Blast Zone, man.
I looked up all the cards that were like just red and said enchantment on them, and like there were like 3 that actually interacted with enchantments, and then there were several that were like there's a couple cards that literally say non-enchantment.
Yeah, but otherwise, red actually covers. It's gaining a lot of ground. Obviously, it's interacting more on the stack recently. Interacts with creatures pretty well, and artifacts. Obviously, it's one of its interacting with artifacts is one of its strengths. I guess the biggest downside being that interaction with artifacts, like some of the best cards, like we were discussing, Meltdown, is kind of hindered by the fact that if you're not playing green, you're going to be heavily into artifacts yourself. So it's good at answering them, but oftentimes you don't want to be damaging your own proactive game plan. I think that's it for weaknesses. And finally, for this discussion, we're going to be talking about pairing red with other colors. I was gonna say in order of worst to best, but we're just gonna start with the worst one.
And then, words.
So starting with red-white, what does white help red accomplish?
So all I have here in the show notes is the comic image of just huge brain being "I'm stupid faster," which I really feel like embodies this color combination because
hopefully at this point the thumbnail kind of dissolves onto the screen.
It's just like neither red nor white really fills in each other's weaknesses that well, and they don't really like synergize in any meaningful way for the most part. It's just rough.
Yeah, which I think has been somewhat exemplified by a even less than either of mono white or mono red, a lack of Boros representation for a long time.
Yeah.
We have seen a bit with Winota and now Cole, and I think that also kind of helps illustrate how they don't necessarily synergize super well, because those two decks are like wildly opposite.
Yeah.
And like, to me, that implies that means there isn't a consistent theme that works between red and white.
Yeah, it's honestly it's more like Winota is sort of just like a white deck splashing red because its commander is red, and Cole's sort of just like this red deck splashing white for combo pieces. Like,
yeah,
it's imagine if Winota were a human connected or attacked, you'd look at the top 6 for non-humans. That would just be
disgusting. I agree.
That'd be gross.
No thanks.
Too bad.
It's just
promises that non-humans are good.
It's just like, okay, so to be completely serious, what do red and white actually support each other on?
Enchantment removal.
Enchantment removal for red.
Yep.
More interaction. Nice. You get silence effects. You get another recruiter.
White can also bolster if your deck wants to be on stacks. Then white also can provide that, because the lack of red stacks is.
I kind of feel like that's a white takes red thing, where it can kind of take situationally some of the best red stacks, which is, Blood Moon. Essentially.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's cases for like, a red deck that would want a rule of law, or would profit well into rule of law effects, but obviously doesn't have access to them.
White also just like. Yeah, I don't know. It lets you tutor equipments, but equipment are really bad. Like really bad.
Unless one day Sunforger will unlock.
I mean, Sunforger was unlocked with Feather when Paradox Engine was still around, and then Paradox Engine got banned. Sucks.
Honestly, I would. They're Feather with God, what's the one CMC red?
Magnetic Theft, yeah.
Magnetic Theft, yeah. If you could have the Magnetic Theft Sunforger like engine in the command zone, like kind of guaranteed every time, even then the red and white instance just do not cut it.
Yeah,
but it'd be so cool if there was like a good enough utility package where like that kind of thing could.
I mean,
could,
the actual abuser of Sunforger right now is Zerta, right? Because you can reduce the re-equip cost, and I'm pretty sure it has some combos with it. I think
they'd definitely be rough.
I actually don't think it does. Like,
it's hard
combos?
the problem is that it's hard to like the like modern version of that deck has always relied on Manamorphos to like fix you back into mana.
Like I could see there being some crazy line, like if you have just, I don't know, 10 lands and like a second Sunrise and Sunforger or something, maybe, but something stupid.
Yeah. Even if they're helping each other, they're just too. There's not enough core strength there to really bring them.
And there's like just not enough like synergy between them either.
You can make a great generic, blue-black deck without a commander. Your Boros deck without a commander is just awful.
I mean, like tutors and counter magic sort of go together pretty nicely anyway.
And also the best, win con.
Yeah, and just all that stuff. But like,
what's your best Boros win con? Freaking Godo Helm is like yikes if you have to run that in the 99.
I mean, it's probably some variant of like the Kiki twin, nonsense.
Yeah,
because you definitely get a decent amount of redundancy on that.
Yeah,
tappers for it.
Okie dokie. Oh, dude, this talk of Boros is tiring me out.
Yeah, I guess that is also what you get, a bunch of Kiki combo pieces in white.
Which nobody will ever play in like actual.
Next up we have Is It with red blue. So how does blue help red?
If somebody wants to read off this description, because I think this was a bit of a masterpiece from my end.
Then read it out yourself.
Okay, sure. You ask someone else. Red plays support to blue's superior everything. Except blue doesn't want to admit it, but really needs Dockside, so it puts it up with red leeching off of it.
Yeah.
It puts up with red leeching off it. Yeah.
I mean, I think like red blue, just on its own, has consistently been like on the fringes of cEDH. I think in part that was just because like they printed a bunch of really, really good Grixis commanders. And so then it was kind of like, well, why wouldn't I just play Grixis? Like, why am I playing, Riel or Niv or, or Mizzix or like one of these when I could just play like Kess or Inala or something like that. But like, I think adding blue to these red decks definitely, it gives you consistency on some of the effects that red normally gets. Things like looting and card selection, which red has like some of. Blue definitely adds a lot more. You get more wheels, so you kind of get a lot of the tools to play like stormy type strategies, and those are generally good and just like worse than Grixis, which is why you don't sort of see them that much.
Yeah, it's sort of just like blue sort of completes the other half of a lot of red's things. Like it gets like the other half of the good stack interaction. It gets the other half of the good wheels. It's like the other half of the good tutors that it wants. You have to play like the good artifactors and stuff. It's just like, I don't know.
Yeah, just a common theme is that the best commanders have 2 toughness.
One thing with red blue though is, even though the colors are very complementary in many ways, they are also still a kind of commander dependent color pairing, and that seems to be the case with a lot of like non-black decks, right? Red blue, if you're trying to do something there, the things you're trying to tutor for combos is like, it doesn't quite work out. There's not like an amazing combo that you can assemble just in red blue in the 99. So you are kind of quite commander dependent, and there aren't that many cEDH viable red blue commanders. So I think that's partly why we haven't seen too much red blue.
Well, but like I feel like they would be cEDH viable. Like, again, I don't think that like I think that Riel's effect is like fine. It's just
I think so as well.
It's just like very hard to justify. Yeah, even if you argue that like some of the blue-red commanders' effects are better than, say, like I'm using Kess as just like a baseline of what Grixis does. Like black cards are so good that like.
Well, the only justification that you could make for Riel is that she has a really strong value engine, which is something that, you know, you kind of, that's kind of what the command zone provides a lot of decks, is just the value engine and consistency.
Yeah.
Like
if only Kess had some sort of value in the command zone, am I right?
No, but I mean, like, I'm just saying you can't, like, you wouldn't ever be able to put up, you could make the argument that Riel's value engine is scales better than Kess's. It's like, it's tough. They're yeah, like Kess is obviously, I think, quote unquote, infinitely scales with Tainted Pact, but like you would never say that like Mizzix or something could compete with, you know, Kess for value.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, one thing we also forgot to mention with Boros, and you know, also is is that there's no non-commander cards of note that actually see play in these.
I think Wear Tear is actually a notable Boros card.
That isn't really Boros.
Yeah,
barely Boros. I guess. But yeah, we could.
I think that card is certainly like underplayed from what I've seen.
Oh, I fully agree with that.
I don't know. I think with Wear Tear, it's like it really depends on how badly you need it to be an instant. Otherwise, something like Fragmentize, I think it's like
what?
if you're playing like if you were playing some
like
weird,
the fact that you can hit two things, like what?
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, we like
the mana efficiency does matter.
Let us know if we're missing something, but like we for the life of us could not find an Is It card that sees play in a lot of main decks, like as a staple, or like even just like not even as a staple, but just like not as a combo piece.
I mean,
yeah, the best we came up with was Is It Charm in like
Signet
Riel
and Talisman.
Oh god, no.
Like yeah, we came up with like Niv Mizzet and Is It Charm, and I don't think anything plays Is It Charm. Maybe Riel does, and like a couple decks play Niv Mizzet, if that.
For like divergent piles.
Yeah, for exactly WinCon.
Like, or all took over Goblin Electromancer, if that was ever a thing.
Yeah.
Next up, you have Red Black, which I was making the case. So the next two with Red Black and Red Green, we were kind of debating on what we think is the better two color pairing. I was leaning towards Red Black, and I think based off the fact that you're having like the rituals and is really, you know, complementary to the Ad Nauseam, and there's enough cards in black with the tutors Ad Nauseam, Doomsday, World Gorger Dragon. Like I think there's some combos that you get access to that are quite fast.
Okay,
and I think that Red Black gets a race Red Green.
As soon as you say Doomsday, you're talking about specifically Grenzo, and I don't think we're allowed to we can't just bring commanders into this.
I think what I would say is that Red Black is probably better than Red Green, but I think that Red Black is substantially less better than Red Green than Black is better than Green.
Like, okay.
Like Black is just a better color than Green.
Yeah.
And so, like, yeah, you know, Red Black is going to be better than Red Green, like, just as a baseline. I think that Green synergizes better with Red.
Yeah.
But I don't know that that's enough to make up for the deficit it starts with.
Sure. I can get behind that.
Also, the whole thing here is that, like, they're a bit difficult to actually compare because they sort of excel in adding different things to Red, and they operate on different axes. So, like, Black-Red is definitely... Yeah, okay, we're gonna keep it going with this. with this descriptor. Black-Red is definitely, like, more it's more like jumpy / spiky, where it's what it adds is speed in certain cases and more payoffs, but not necessarily a whole lot more consistency, where green adds like fewer highs to red, but it's definitely like a lot, it adds a lot more consistent of a game plan to red's identity.
Arguably red adds consistency to black in that your ad nauseums are more likely to close out the game with the help of like Dockside and Breach
rituals.
I don't think black decks have historically, like mono black has had trouble winning the game
with ad nauseums. I know, but that was why I was like, arguably it's it does get some two pretty.
I mean,
cards.
I think also this argument is a little bit like
and also the one thing that red does help with black is the stack helping resolve your ad nauseums.
But I think that I think that this is also a little bit of a misplaced argument, because realistically black doesn't add much to red and green doesn't add much to red. Red adds to black and red adds to green.
Yes, that's an important point. I guess before we close out the red black discussion, we've got like two notable non-commander cards of note, which would be Fire Covenant, which is absolutely a house, and Mayhem Devil, which is like fringe sees play as like a win con / stacks piece in some decks.
Hey, don't forget Rakdos Charm.
Who plays Rakdos Charm?
Yeah, who plays Rakdos?
I don't think we forgot Rakdos Charm. I don't think that's what happened. We all thought about it and decided not to
actively discarded it.
And then also the last one, which is technically not a red card or a black card, but the combination of World Gorger Dragon and an enchantment that is black that combos with World Gorger Dragon.
Yeah. Cool. Red, green, and then we can close out the topic.
I mean, it does the green thing, right? Of adding creature tutors is the big one. You get Dorks, creature tutors.
Which is actually which is something that red desperately needs, because it actually has good creature combos.
Yeah, definitely blue and black certainly gain less from green than red does, just because they have worse creatures, where red has like a lot of really good creatures that it just can't leverage right now because it just doesn't have the tools to get to them consistently.
And then you get access to probably the best multicolor red card in Vexing Shusher. Card is gas.
Definitely not bad.
Definitely not a bad
unreal.
One. And I mean also green definitely shores up the like anti being interacted part of red with, you get like your veils and then like some of the more permanent effects, obviously Vexing Cheshire, and then things like Destiny Spinner, and I mean Shepherd obviously doesn't work super well with red cards, but and there's more cards like that are, they get worse, but
definitely start dropping off a cliff pretty quickly.
Yeah,
they
it protects the evolution that gets the red creature into play. So
exactly.
Okay. Does anyone have anything else to say about red before we move on to everyone's favorite segment? No.
TNT is dead.
Okay then.
Grixis.
It's time for Gut Check.
Check.
Okay. So, Morgan, I believe you said you had a gut check for us this week.
I sure do. So, this question is, what is the card that you most misevaluated when you first saw it, or it was first suggested in a given context?
I feel like this is a subtweet.
Oh, I already know.
It actually was not intended to be. And sorry, when I say like when it was first suggested in a given context, I mean like as an example, like Brain Freeze as a combo card with Breach. Right, like obviously we all knew that the card Brain Freeze existed long before Breach was printed, and we all knew like it had seen some amount of play in like low color decks and whatever.
No, I've never made a mistake ever, so this I'm just gonna have to pass on this one.
Okay, I made a hard mistake. Well, not like a hard mistake. I definitely misevaluated it. But with the original partner printings, I was way too hyped about Thrasios and completely glossed over what Timna said. What Timna's text was. And I totally slept on it. I was brewing Thrasios X that just wasn't Timna. And then friend of the podcast, or friend of QMTG, I guess, was like, yeah, but have you read Timna? And I'm like, no.
Not really, no.
Guess I'll do that now.
Mine, I think, would be Smothering Tithe, which was captured on the podcast.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I still feel somewhat vindicated by my stance in that I think part of my original stance was that I didn't think Smothering Tithe was like an auto include in every deck. I think I definitely
no one
undersold how strong it was with comparing it to Thran Dynamo.
Oh my goodness!
But
did you actually?
I do think that the fact that we are not seeing a lot of Smothering Tithe in the meta right now, partially. At least it makes me feel partially vindicated.
I feel like that's less due to Smothering Tithe being a bad card and more due to white being
Breacher.
a bad card right now, though.
All right, Reed, what's yours?
I think I'd probably have to say Savine stuff, just because I didn't really get it for a bit. I just hadn't looked into the lines, I think, for intuition stuff with it, and I was just like, whatever. So I definitely recognize now that like it exists. I'm not super like I definitely still don't think that like intuition definitely doesn't need Savine's Breach and LED to be a good card, but I get why it's a reasonable package now. More so than I did at the time.
Mine definitely has to be Wishclaw Talisman. I looked at that card, I was like, it's just so risky. Like, someone's gonna stop you and then you're just gonna lose the game because you gave someone else a free tutor. And like that does happen. But certainly having played a lot more with the card, I found that being able to cast a tutor or have a tutor that isn't a spell on the turn you're going off, get an extra treasure off your dockside, and then also, you can usually give it to someone who's like decently far back in the turn order and not super well positioned. It's definitely a card that I've been really happy with in my faster decks.
But to be fair to you, Wishclaw came out before Dockside, right? So you can't. When it was coming out, you couldn't have evaluated it missing the Dockside portion.
It came out like just, but yeah, that's fair.
What do you mean just? Eldraine was like an October set.
And Dockside was in the summer?
Yeah, it's like almost a year.
What? No, Dockside was in the summer of 2019, my guy. Dockside came out before Wishclaw Talisman.
Am I baked? I'm baked. Probably.
Can't vindicate him.
It's all the Boros talk that...
Can confirm baked.
Yeah. August 23rd, 2019 versus September something, 2019?
Okay. Confirmed baked.
The database gets it right again.
Oh, October 4th, whatever. Obviously, I'm like memeing a bit with saying you get an extra treasure off your dockside.
Yeah.
But it matters, but it's not like the reason the card is playable. But no, I sort of looked at Wishclaw Talisman and went like, okay, it's better than Scheming Symmetry, but it's definitely that was not an apt comparison, certainly.
Cool. So we have one listener question this week, and that comes to us from Squirrel Mob. Are y'all hockey fans? I feel like our Canadian cards are on the line.
I'm really letting you down here.
Yeah, I definitely was a hockey fan. The problem for me was that I grew up in Ottawa and was a hockey fan, which was rough.
Because the Sens fucking suck.
Okay, in fairness, when I was cheering for them, they did in fact make it to the NHL Finals. But then I moved to Toronto, and now imagine whatever city your sports team's biggest rival is, right? Imagine just moving to that city, and then all of your friends cheer for that team, and you're just like, let's just not talk about this.
Yeah.
And that's me.
I mainly watch Raptors basketball. That's like really the only sport I follow. And lots of people in my family watch hockey, so, you know, sometimes talking with them, they're like, I've got peripheral hockey following. Like, I know kind of what's going on with the Leafs and Habs right now. Talk about, you know, Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner doing really well with the Leafs. And
I guess I do also follow like Team Canada hockey usually. So like the Olympics or like the World Juniors or things like that. I'll usually tune in and watch us just, you know, stomp all the other countries. It's great. But
sometimes if I'm at mini putt, I'll do some dribbling, but not much more than that.
Yeah, no, as I was saying in pre-show, I definitely watch more curling than I do hockey, which is to say I watch the Canadian men's curling team every 4 years of the Olympics, and I do not watch hockey.
Okay. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. If you guys would like to reach out to us with any questions, comments, or concerns, you can contact us on Twitter at IntoNorthPod, via our email, intonorthpodcast@gmail.com, or on our Discord server, the invite link for which can be found in the description for this episode. An extra special thanks to all of our patrons who help cover the expenses for our show and allow us to work towards improving the quality of the podcast. If you too would like to become a patron, we are at patreon.com/IntoNorthPodcast. Another way you can support us is via our TCG Player affiliate link. So anytime you want to purchase something from TCG Player, if you use our affiliate link, which is in the podcast/YouTube description, a portion of your purchase goes towards supporting the podcast. Thank you as always to the band Vox Cadre for our lovely podcast music, to Nate Slover for our equally lovely podcast logo, and to our video editor Manta Ray Hat. The next episode will be out in 2 weeks. Until then, see ya.
Bye.